Hey folks, Prepper Princess. Before we get started, I want to read something from you from one of the most greatest men who ever lived, Martin Luther King Jr., from his 1968 speech, The Other America. This is just a passage from the speech. It's not the entire speech, but it states, "Let me say, as I've always said, and I will always continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve. That in a real sense, it is impractical for the Negro to even think of mounting a violent revolution in the United States. So I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way, and continue to affirm that there is another way." Let's get started. All right, folks. So I have lots of notes I've been taking over the last few days and have a few things to comment on. This is not intended to be a rant or anything along those lines, but this is in fact the first time since World War II that the National Guard has been mobilized due to civil unrest in Minneapolis. A police officer was shot dead in Oakland, California. Minnesota is burning. The curfews have been implemented and ignored. New York City, Los Angeles, Louisville, Dallas, Detroit, and Portland are all either burning or in violent riots. I do want you all to know that the majority of the things that you are seeing on the news is fake news, very, very fake. I go back to when I lived in California, and all I was seeing on the news and in reports was that California was burning to the ground, and people who did not live in California thought that literally the entire state was on fire, and that PG&E power outages, like California went dark, and no lights were on in the entire state of California, when really it was little tiny pockets of California that had these fires, and businesses were still open. So if a home did not have power, they could literally walk 2 blocks down to a Starbucks, and Starbucks would be open for business with all the lights on, all the electricity. The majority of PG&E was turning off power because of high winds, and these were mostly to private residences. So in California, it had a small, well, it was not small, it was very large fire up in Northern California, but if you compare it to the entire state of California, it was a very small blip on the screen. And what you're seeing right now with all of the riots going on, you're seeing what the news needs you to see in order to sell their show, in order for you to watch them in particular. Just like YouTube is a business, and news, fear sells, and fake news sells when it comes to publicity. And I want you all to know that I read an article a few days ago. I believe it was on Breitbart. It might have been on MSN.com, not MSNBC.com, just MSN.com. The St. Paul, Minnesota mayor, Melvin Carter, stated that every single arrest that they made that day was for a person who was out of state. So what is going on right now is that there is civil unrest and violence due to, you know what. Again, I have to be very careful with the words that I use. I cannot speak names. Videos will be demonetized. My channel might be put under the radar. But you all know the reasons for the riots. And the thing is that there are extremely peaceful protests going on. There are people who are united and coming together and peacefully protesting what happened. However, that does not sell news. So these people are coming in out of state. My assumption, I can't understand the psychology behind the riots, because riots are not intended to get anything done. I believe in the entire history of the United States, riots have never led to change. They have never led to reform or the changing of laws. But the people who are coming into these large cities that are known for riots, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, these people are coming in from out of state to rob, vandalize, and it seems that a lot of these all of these vandalisms are being shown on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and it's almost like these, I don't want to say rebels because they don't seem to be very organized. These people are going to these places because they're bored with nothing to do, or they need to get out their violent tendencies somehow, and they want to become popular by doing so. Like, it's cool to be violent, and it's cool to destroy personal and private and public properties. And this is the world that we live in now, where personal property is not respected. The government, not the government, but law enforcement is no longer respected. And yes, there are some bad apples in law enforcement, but there are bad apples in every place, everywhere that you go. And what really needs to change? Instead of focusing on the bad, I think that we should follow what Mother Teresa said, and she believes in positive affirmation. And I believe that there was a story one time where it's sort of like abortion, like anti-abortion or pro-life. So anti-abortion is the same thing as pro-life. So if you were to go to Mother Teresa and say, would you come to an anti-abortion rally with us? She would say, no, I never will. If you create a pro-life rally, I will go to a pro-life rally, but not an anti-abortion rally. And it's the same thing here. They're not, if these vandals and rioters have any sort of intent on making change, they need to change their approach and change themselves into positive, peaceful protest. That's when things really get done, not when you burn down police stations and burn down post offices and vandalize vehicles, because it pretty much takes away any value or perception of integrity that your group may have. So nobody's listening. Nobody's listening to your message when that happens. But the news is also not broadcasting the message that does need to be heard. They're not showing the peaceful people with their signs saying, bless you and have a nice day. They're not showing people who are congregating in parks and practicing social distancing with peaceful signs sitting down. They're not showing the people who are banding together for change. They're showing just the riots and the looting to completely discredit any change that anyone may want to make. And I don't think that that's right. As you all know, that when you read the news, you really, really have to dig for truth these days. You really have to dig for truth. Like, people are saying, oh, it's only a 14% unemployment rate. No, it's 50. It's 50% of the United States is not working when you account for welfare, Social Security, disability, people who have given up on looking for jobs. It's 50%. If you're looking at one of your neighbors, look left and look right. If you are not unemployed, one of them is. Or just look to your left. It's either you or them. So the news is getting to the point where it's extremely difficult to tell who is telling the truth. And I no longer watch mainstream news because I can't decipher what's true. Unfortunately, most people only have access to these media representations, and they're getting the wrong news. So what you're seeing on this issue is you're seeing people coming in from out of state, vandalizing property, causing mischief, people who are not really for the cause that people are trying to bring into fruition. They're they're not there for that cause. They're there for trouble. The people who do want the cause to be the cause for change, the people who do want change to happen, those people are not being broadcasted. And I think that that needs to change. I think that the world is actually becoming even more negative nowadays because of all of the fake news that's going on. If the news broadcasted what was really happening, they'd say like, oh yeah, there's a riot over here, but check out, this group of 3,000 people over here, they're having a barbecue in the park with their signs and inviting people over to share food. So, but they're not showing those wonderful people over there who just want to talk and, be peaceful. They're only showing the riots. So I want you all to know that is my thought. Personally, I'm very disappointed in what happened, and I think that there should be repercussions for what happened. And I also don't think that there should be any riots. I think that the police need to come in there and disperse the crowds by any means necessary, and not allow this to continue, because if they continue to allow people to protest this way, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And that is all I have to say about that. Do what you can with what you've got. Prepper Princess out.